Lab tests have finally confirmed what treasure hunters have dreamed of for centuries. Oak Island holds real, priceless treasure. This season, a staggering $95 million in artifacts has been uncovered, ranging from intricately crafted coins to relics whose origins stretch back centuries. For decades, the island was a puzzle, a web of flooded pits, hidden shafts, and cryptic markers that led many to declare the hunt hopeless. But persistence, innovation, and careful excavation have turned speculation into undeniable proof. The findings are more than just gold or silver. They are a direct connection to the past, evidence of civilizations and secret societies that may have once used the island as a clandestine vault. Each artifact tells a story, some hinting at medieval European origins, others pointing to mysterious global trade routes, and a few suggesting ties to legendary figures long thought lost to history. With lab confirmation in hand, historians, treasure hunters, and enthusiasts alike are re-examining every theory about Oak Island. The implications are massive. Not only does this validate decades of exploration, but it also opens the door to even deeper, more lucrative discoveries beneath the island's surface. Oak Island has finally proven itself more than a myth. It is a treasure trove waiting to be fully uncovered. If you love unraveling real-life mysteries buried beneath centuries of legend, make sure to like this video and subscribe. The footage begins with a strange flicker across an anonymous web forum. A single post, quickly deleted, claims to show pages from a classified Nova Scotia geological lab report, one that confirms something the world has debated for over 2 centuries. The document describes trace gold found in core samples drilled from Oak Island's Shaft 9. Not just any gold, but one carrying the Templar-era purity signature, a fingerprint of medieval metal once thought lost forever. Within hours, the screenshots spread like wildfire. Insiders claim the samples were quietly sent months earlier by Rick Lagina's team, coded under false identifiers to avoid tampering or outside interference. No logos, no names, just coordinates, weight, and soil density. But someone inside the lab recognized the depth markers. They knew exactly where this sample came from. And that's when the leaks began. The report cites isotopic ratios that don't belong to modern ore. They align with gold mined and refined in 14th-century Mediterranean foundries, the same era linked to the Knights Templar before their empire fell. The document even includes a redacted annotation beside one reading: "Composition consistent with Crusader-era alloy." That's not coincidence. That's history whispering through the dirt. Then came the whistleblower's statement. A voice message left for an investigative journalist claimed the results had been suppressed for national preservation reasons. The whistleblower said they know what it is. They just can't admit where it came from. Moments later, their account vanished. No trace, no username, no return contact. By dawn, Mahone Bay was swarming with journalists. Camera crews clustered on the shoreline, zooming lenses toward the misty outline of Oak Island. Drones hovered over the treetops, searching for movement. Something enormous had shifted, because if this report was authentic, the legend of Oak Island was no longer legend at all. It was a confirmed gold cache buried beneath centuries of traps, myths, and secrecy. The next day, another piece of the leak emerged. The lab's internal report, dated May 14th. It detailed microfractures, sediment density, and the unthinkable: gold traces at depths over 160 feet. Spectrometry results showed an alloy composition identical to Venetian trade gold from the late Crusades. An impossible match unless someone intentionally placed it there. Technicians noticed organic residue mixed with the particles. They performed carbon dating, expecting modern contamination, but the data pointed to 1350 AD, give or take 20 years. That year overlaps perfectly with the disappearance of the last Templar fleet, rumored to have sailed west carrying their treasury. For the first time, modern science and ancient legend stood on the same timeline. One page of the report included a chilling conclusion, printed in bold: origin non-geological. Human intention confirmed. It was an admission that the gold was not natural. It was buried deliberately. Someone, centuries ago, went to impossible lengths to hide it where no one could reach. The story took another twist when metallurgists noticed that the elemental structure of the gold was unusually stable, lacking oxidation even after centuries underground. That could only mean one thing: it had been encased or sealed in engineered containment. This wasn't scattered gold dust. It was stored treasure, protected with intent. As the world digested the leak, the Laginas made no official statement. But Oak Island's normally quiet shorelines were suddenly filled with movement again. Under heavy fog and tighter security, trucks rolled in overnight, carrying industrial equipment and scaffolding. Drone operators caught glimpses of newly reinforced platforms rising near the garden shaft, the same zone believed to intersect ancient flood tunnels. Witnesses reported that Rick and Marty had returned to the island without media crews. No production trailers, no public schedule, just a skeleton team working under tight control. One crew member was overheard saying, "They're not filming this part." Whatever they were doing, it wasn't for the cameras. It was for confirmation. An unmarked helicopter was also spotted hovering low above the site before diverting toward the mainland. No one could identify the registration code. Later that night, several boats reportedly ferried sealed wooden crates away from the island under tarps, heading toward an unknown warehouse facility along the southern coast. Locals say the Lagina brothers stopped responding to calls and emails. Even their closest advisors refused interviews, citing newly extended non-disclosure agreements. The only public comment came from Marty Lagina during a brief encounter with reporters outside a Lunenburg dockyard. He didn't deny the leak. He didn't confirm it either. He simply said, "We're not looking for legends anymore. We're validating history." Those 6 words set the internet ablaze. By then, satellite imagery showed heavy machinery digging deeper than before, while security patrols blocked all civilian access to the island. Fishermen in Mahone Bay claimed to see floodlights burning all night, illuminating cranes and tunnel rigs that hadn't been active in years. Someone was clearly preparing for a recovery, one that the world wasn't meant to witness. Inside the island's command tent, ground sensors recorded metallic interference readings near the lower shafts. The data was erratic but clear, something metallic, dense, and uniform, embedded deep beneath the clay. Engineers believed it wasn't just a single object. It was a cluster of deposits, multiple fragments aligned in a pattern suggesting deliberate placement, possibly chests or reinforced containers. The tension among the crew was palpable. Some had been part of the show for over a decade, chasing myths, theories, and false leads. But this time, the air felt different, heavier, electric, charged with the realization that the treasure might finally be real. One camera operator described the moment in a private chat later leaked online. When the scanner pinged, everyone froze. It didn't feel like a show anymore. It felt like we were trespassing. Back on the mainland, speculation grew that the Laginas were under government observation. Insiders whispered that the lab's confirmation of Templar-era isotopes had triggered interest from both Canadian heritage and European cultural ministries. But for now, the brothers stayed silent, their focus buried under the island's soil. The question no one dared ask aloud was now obvious. If the Templars really brought their treasure to Oak Island, and science had just proven the gold was there, what else might be buried with it? And as the excavation deepened in silence, one thing became clear. Oak Island was no longer chasing a mystery. The mystery was chasing them. Artifact valuation experts begin leaking numbers the public was never supposed to see. Early appraisals estimate the Oak Island recoveries at over $95 million if the items prove authentic. The data originates from a private insurance assessment obtained by anonymous insiders tied to a European underwriting syndicate. Each item listed reads like a myth brought to life. A gold reliquary fragment engraved with the Cross of Languedoc, several dozen Venetian trade coins oxidized into coralized clusters, and 3 lead tablets etched in a ciphered dialect no modern linguist has yet decoded. One of those tablets, once digitally reconstructed by forensic imaging, displays geometric engravings that correspond to precise underground coordinates beneath Smith's Cove, an area previously dismissed as fully excavated years ago. Within hours of that revelation, quiet panic ripples through the antiquities world. Economists issue private memos warning that the authentication of Templar gold, long considered a conspiracy fringe topic, could collapse the private artifact market overnight. Because if genuine Templar-era bullion exists beneath Canadian soil, then ownership claims tied to European monarchies, religious institutions, and even the Vatican could come flooding into courtrooms worldwide. Meanwhile, data trails show live monitoring connections from Zurich, Monaco, and Luxembourg. Anonymous accounts tied to historic banking families rumored to have ancestral links to the original Templar financiers. Security around the Oak Island dig instantly tightens. Satellite phones are confiscated, drones grounded, and even crew members' families are reportedly asked to sign temporary non-disclosure extensions. Whatever was being unearthed wasn't merely archaeological, it was financial, political, and spiritual all at once. As the whispers grow, historians begin to connect the metallurgical data with something long buried in French archives. The alloy ratios, specifically the combination of silver to copper trace, match coinage minted by the Templar treasury of La Rochelle, the same port where the last fleet vanished in 1307 under orders from King Philip IV. That fleet, according to a handful of suppressed maritime logs, carried metals of sacred dedication destined for a New World refuge. For centuries, scholars dismissed that as romantic myth, but now, with physical proof in the soil of Oak Island, the past refuses to stay buried. Rick Lagina's team sends high-resolution scans of the reliquary fragment to Paris for comparative analysis. 2 weeks later, an encrypted message returns from a curator at the Cluny Museum, the guardian of France's medieval ecclesiastical artifacts. The curator confirms privately that the hammer mark on the Oak Island fragment matches one found on a preserved reliquary believed to have belonged to St. John the Baptist, to the Grand Master Jacques de Molay's personal chapel. They agree to no formal statement, fearing international claim disputes, but the implication is undeniable. The same artisan hands that forged relics for the Knights Templar likely forged what now sits in the Oak Island tent under armed guard. Behind closed doors, the crew adopts a new name for the discovery, the Grail Gold. It's no longer viewed as simple treasure, but as a symbolic deposit, a coded testament to the Order's survival after its destruction. Marty, usually the practical skeptic, reportedly stands silent over the artifact cases for nearly an hour before saying quietly, "They didn't hide money, they hid belief." Further scans of the excavation chamber begin to reveal stranger details. Ground-penetrating radar picks up an anomaly beneath the main shaft, an unnatural curve forming an almost perfect dome. Engineers initially assume it's a collapsed pocket, but the uniform structure suggests deliberate construction. When deeper sonar mapping completes, the outline reveals segmented alcoves encircling the chamber like petals of a stone flower. Each alcove returns high-density readings consistent with metallic presence. To verify, The team deploys an underwater probe into a narrow borehole leading to one of the side chambers. The live feed, grainy but haunting, shows carved Templar crosses etched into mineral encrustations, their lines still sharp despite centuries underwater. The chamber isn't random. It's an engineered vault. Even more astonishingly, the probe's sensors detect faint electromagnetic fluctuations, possibly from residual mineral conductivity, a form of ancient hydraulic insulation used to maintain dryness around metallic deposits. The engineers gather around the feed in disbelief. The chamber's design reflects a level of precision architecture that shouldn't have existed in the 14th century. Pressure valves embedded into the walls suggest a self-sealing flood system designed to sabotage intruders by redirecting tidal water, exactly matching legends told since the 1700s. But this isn't the folklore of accidental flooding. It's calculated hydraulic engineering, a trap built to protect sacred cargo. As cameras roll, Rick's voice wavers with a mix of awe and fear. "This isn't just a deposit," he says, eyes fixed on the monitor. "It's a designed message." His words hang heavy in the tent. Everyone knows what he means. The vault was built to speak, not to store. It carries the Templar creed carved into geometry, into stone, into secrecy. The cross patterns are positioned with astronomical accuracy, each aligning to constellations visible only during the autumn equinox of 1308, the very year the Order's persecution reached its peak. The team begins documenting every inch of the dome's curvature, noting unusual symmetry. 8-sided alignment, the sacred Templar symbol of regeneration and eternal guardianship. In the middle, radar indicates a solid mass shaped like an altar or plinth. The readings suggest a dense core, heavier than gold, possibly encased within layered stone. If the previous discoveries were the surface, this could be the heart. Marty insists on waiting until structural reinforcements are complete before breaching the dome, but Rick disagrees. "If this is what we think it is," he argues, "the longer we wait, the more risk we take." Yet risk isn't the only concern anymore. Government officials begin making discreet appearances near the island, under the guise of heritage oversight. Their timing feels deliberate. The Laginas know they're racing against both time and bureaucracy. Each new sample from the dome's rim continues to show trace gold and resin-bonding compounds, ancient sealing agents that indicate medieval waterproofing. It's proof of intelligence, precision, and ritual. The vault's builders were more than miners. They were guardians crafting a sanctuary. As the crew prepares to send a secondary probe deeper into the dome, the water sensors spike. Pressure shifts, possibly indicating a blocked chamber ahead. The instruments vibrate, then stabilize, confirming that beneath the dome lies a sealed cavity, untouched by modern tools. Everyone falls silent, realizing they're standing above a chamber that has remained perfectly preserved since before Columbus ever set sail. The data confirms it. Oak Island is no longer just a legend of traps and pirates. Beneath its soil lies a hydraulic vault, an intentional crypt holding artifacts that link directly to the most secretive order in medieval history. The realization settles like gravity, centuries of myth converging into cold, measurable fact. And as the final probe steadies its camera toward the darkness of the lower chamber, faint gold reflections shimmer back through the silted water, suggesting that the treasure, long thought lost to time, is finally beginning to reveal itself. Within days of the lab leaks and the escalating rumors of a confirmed Templar gold vault, a team from the Canadian Heritage Department arrives on Oak Island without prior notice or communication. No camera crews are allowed to film their landing. They move with quiet authority, escorted by plainclothes personnel, and begin distributing classified access badges to everyone still on site. By that evening, government signage is installed across the island's perimeter fences, reading Protected Historical Zone, Federal authorization required. Suddenly, Oak Island is no longer a private archaeological operation. It has become a restricted area under federal supervision. Within 48 hours, regulations arrive in writing. All drone flights above the island are prohibited under newly declared airspace monitoring protocols. Satellite data begins showing faint, unexplained digital noise over the coordinates, electronic interference patterns that wipe out GPS stability. Crew members attempting to upload footage report file corruption, and sudden hard drive wipes following mysterious power surges. At first, the anomalies are blamed on equipment error, but when every recording device malfunctions during key excavation windows, the coincidences become impossible to ignore. Someone, or something, does not want new data leaving the island. Rumors spread that the Canadian government's interest may be more than historical preservation. Internal correspondence from the department cites the possibility of materials of European sovereign origin buried on the island, language that implies crown ownership. In other words, if the gold truly predates Canada's formation, it might be legally tied to British or even Vatican jurisdiction. That single phrase changes everything. The Lagina brothers, who have spent decades pursuing this mystery, now find themselves working under surveillance. Their equipment is scanned before use, their footage reviewed before broadcast. One crew member confides that 2 new consultants stationed at the dig site are actually intelligence officers. By the week's end, speculation grows beyond control. Independent journalists claim that Oak Island may hold pre-Columbian evidence of European arrival, long before Columbus, centuries before British colonization. The Templar legend, once ridiculed, suddenly appears plausible. A centuries-old alliance between faith, secrecy, and power may have literally buried its heart in Nova Scotia's soil. With pressure mounting and government monitors in place, a counter-effort begins overseas. Anonymous backers arrange for an independent laboratory in Europe to re-examine preserved Oak Island core samples quietly sent months before the lockdown. The lab, located in Basel but contracted through a Zurich collector, performs isotope analysis with full secrecy. The results are conclusive. The gold traces exhibit the exact same isotopic ratio as Iberian bullion from the 13th and 14th centuries, the period dominated by the Knights Templars' mining operations in the Iberian Peninsula. The lab's internal report uses cautious language, but the implications are explosive. It notes that the metal's crystalline uniformity shows non-ambient stabilization, meaning the gold had been chemically treated to resist corrosion centuries before such processes were known. One researcher privately remarks that whoever refined it possessed metallurgical mastery at least 200 years ahead of Renaissance technology. Another memo describes the alloy's spectral fingerprint as unique enough to be traceable. They name it the Oak Signature. When the Zurich collector, believed to represent an intergenerational banking trust, receives the sealed results, he orders immediate non-disclosure. However, fragments of the document leak to online archives within hours, confirming every rumor the Laginas refuse to speak on. Public reaction explodes. Historians demand open access to the site. Meanwhile, the Heritage Department reinforces the lockdown. The brothers are permitted only supervised access to the excavation zone. Rick keeps silent, his focus fixed on one mission: finishing the dig before it's buried again, this time by bureaucracy instead of floodwater. As deeper excavation continues under restricted lighting, engineers complete a structural scan of the main vault beneath the garden shaft. The scan reveals the impossible. The entire subterranean structure forms a precise octagonal pattern. Each corner aligns within fractions of a degree to magnetic north and celestial coordinates from the autumn equinox, the same 8-sided symmetry used in Templar cathedrals and commanderies across Europe. symbolizing resurrection and divine rebirth. The deeper they map, the clearer the engineering becomes. Hydraulic valves carved directly into the bedrock are discovered, still intact after 7 centuries. When tested, one channel releases a slow trickle of seawater through limestone passages, confirming an intentional flood mechanism. The trap isn't primitive. It's mathematically calculated to trigger when specific air pressure levels drop, meaning even the act of opening one chamber could seal another. Whoever designed it possessed architectural knowledge comparable to Renaissance hydraulics, centuries before Leonardo da Vinci. Then, during one sweep of the southern alcove, a light catches on something engraved into stone, a Latin inscription partly obscured by mineral buildup. As the team scrapes it clean, the phrase emerges clearly, non serviam. Translated, it means, I will not yield. The motto, though used in later centuries for various orders, was known in Templar history as an oath of resistance against tyranny and false faith. It is a defiant message, one carved directly into the vault's defensive mechanism itself. The crew exchanges glances. This isn't mere treasure hoarding, it's spiritual warfare embedded in engineering. Every layer of the chamber tells a story of rebellion, faith, and defiance against kings and popes who sought to erase the order's legacy. The hydraulics, the flood traps, even the chamber geometry all serve a dual purpose. Protect the physical gold, but more importantly, preserve the symbolic power of survival. As sensors penetrate deeper through the chamber's base, an unexpected discovery halts progress. Beneath the central plinth, a dense block assumed to be natural limestone, the instruments detect hollow space. The void extends downward at a perfect angle, connecting with an unknown horizontal passage. Scans reveal metallic echoes in its lower strata, indicating reinforced structures or containers. Yet, attempts to access it trigger slight vibrations across the vault. Proof that even after 700 years, the Templar mechanisms remain active. Government observers insist on postponing the breach until safety analysis concludes. But Rick knows hesitation could mean losing access entirely if new orders come down from Ottawa or London. He walks the perimeter in silence, staring at the engraved cross patterns that seem to glow faintly under lamplight, whispering, they knew someone would come. The chamber feels alive, an intelligent machine made of stone, history, and intent. Outside, night cloaks the island in fog, while military-grade drones patrol the coastline. The excavation lights below flicker with unstable voltage, the air humming with low-frequency static. Every whisper, every mechanical vibration echoes off the rock walls as though the island itself were breathing. Inside the vault, the engineers began plotting a controlled micro-bore to the lower void, carefully avoiding the hydraulic lines. As they prepared the instruments, a low-resonance tremor rippled through the chamber floor, brief, like a heartbeat. The sensors spiked, then stabilized. The readings confirmed what everyone secretly feared and hoped for. Something immense lay sealed beneath. The implications stretched far beyond archaeology or gold. The symbols, the engineering, the defiance, they revealed a message intentionally preserved by those who refused to bow. The Templars hadn't simply hidden their fortune. They had encrypted their faith and legacy into the bedrock of a new world, ensuring that when it was finally found, its meaning would echo louder than the treasure itself. Guided by the tremors and corroborating sensor data, the team moved to the next stage. Thermal imaging scans revealed what appeared to be an inner sanctum, sealed with hardened clay and reinforced with traces of mercury. Archaeologists recognized it instantly, a preservation method used by medieval alchemists to protect sacred objects from decay. Robotic arms descended carefully through the narrow shaft, chiseling through centuries of compression. The feed crackled, static flickering across the monitor, until the chamber wall finally gave way. A rush of air escaped like a sigh from the past inside. Gilded debris, fragments of ornate stone slabs engraved with symbols no one has seen in living memory. Among them lies a half-collapsed chest, iron bands fused together, its surface mottled with corrosion and dust. But magnetic sensors spike the moment it's exposed. "Something inside's reacting," murmurs the technician. They open the chest slowly, hinges snapping after centuries of silence. What spills out isn't what anyone expected. Not coins or crowns, but molten gold fused with shards of ancient glass, once part of ceremonial vessels or chalices. The mass gleams faintly in the floodlight, a solidified river of history. Rick reaches forward, brushing a fragment free. When he holds it up to the light, it refracts a beam of gold and violet. "It's real," he says softly, voice cracking through the radio link. "It's all real." The team stands wordless, the island itself seeming to hold its breath. While cataloging the site, they uncover a smooth slab beneath the chest, unmarked at first glance. A pulse of ultraviolet light reveals incised text buried under grime. It's Latin, "Gloria in terra nova," glory in the new land. Beneath the inscription are faint rune-like markings that appear out of place, symbols closer to Norse than Latin, as if the Templars had encoded directions in multiple languages for safety. Digital overlays of the runes, once translated, form a coordinate grid that aligns perfectly with Mahone Bay's offshore ridge. Satellite sonar confirms several underwater voids in that same area, each consistent with artificial caverns. The implication hits like a thunderclap. The Oak Island chamber isn't singular. It's part of a network, possibly several vaults stretching beneath the bay. The limestone tablet becomes the Rosetta Stone of Oak Island itself, connecting Templar roots from the Old World to the New. Experts note the inscription's phrasing isn't mere declaration, it's a message of intent. The Templars weren't fleeing Europe. They were consecrating a new realm. "A prophecy," says one translator off record, "a message to those who would rediscover them centuries later." Rick studies the inscription long after the crew leaves for the night, tracing each carved letter with his thumb. "They weren't hiding treasure," he murmurs. "They were building a legacy." Then everything changes overnight. Global media outlets light up with headlines that seem too incredible to believe. Templar gold confirmed by Oak Island lab tests. $95.2 million in artifacts validated. The authentication comes from an unprecedented coalition of experts across Europe and North America. Metallurgists, historians, and religious authorities confirming piece by piece that the relics are genuine. The fused gold, when analyzed, reveals isotopic fingerprints identical to Templar treasury gold from La Rochelle. Embedded microdeposits of quartz glass match medieval reliquary craftsmanship from 14th century France, and the organic traces on the vessel shards carbon date precisely to the period of the Templar purge. When the numbers are tallied, the total valuation hits $95.2 million in verified artifacts, making it one of the largest authenticated medieval discoveries in North America. Among the confirmed finds, gold reliquaries etched with Jerusalem crosses, Templar seals in perfect condition, and mineral-preserved manuscripts that scholars believe may hold prayers or inventories from the Lost Order. Within days, the island transforms from a quiet dig site to a restricted zone. The Canadian government issues Heritage Containment Order 327B, closing Oak Island to the public indefinitely. Armed security now guards its perimeter. No civilian drones are permitted within 10 kilometers. The Laginas comply, but privately, they're still processing what they've unleashed. Rick, standing by the edge of Mahone Bay at sunset, holds the same fragment he first lifted from the chamber. The light catches the gold within, scattering it like fire across the waves. The mystery never ended, he says quietly, his voice more reflection than revelation. It just waited. Behind him, the excavation site hums faintly under floodlights, silent, sealed, and watched from above. Somewhere beneath those tides, deeper chambers remain untouched, coordinates marked in stone centuries ago by men who vanished without trace. And though the world now knows that Oak Island's gold is real, one truth still lies buried: why it was placed there, and what message the Templars intended for those who would one day find it.